Hey everybody, welcome to The Mountain Prepper. We're going to be covering a few different topics today, including the U.S. map of most likely nuclear targets. Also, a retired U.S. Army general talks about serious consequences for the United States, and North Korea sending troops to Russia. And for those of you who are new to the channel, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. This is a brand new channel. I wanted to create a community where we can talk openly about the events unfolding across the world and also talk about the importance of prepping and survival tips and survival gear as well. But most importantly, I saw and recognized that so many of us are being left in the dark by the mainstream media about what's really going on across the world and with various conflicts that are going on. And most of you probably know that. But on this channel, we are going to seek out the truth and share that openly. So let's go ahead and start with this map. And this comes from the Irish Star. And it goes on to say, quote, "The threat of nuclear war looms over parts of America as Russia's invasion of Ukraine and other global conflicts persist. A map has been released showing the areas most likely to be targeted in a nuclear attack on U.S. soil, highlighting potential targets in every American state, predominantly in the east, but also along the California coast, as shown in this frightening map. Montana and North Dakota are suggested as key targets due to their numerous nuclear weapons and launch sites. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the Israel-Hamas war, fears of World War III have escalated. Warnings have been issued to Russians that nuclear war is now inevitable, putting millions at risk. If nuclear war breaks out in Russia or China, hundreds of millions will die in minutes, according to this article from Irish Star. It also goes on to say that in the West, Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming have many targets marked on the map, including active nuclear power plants. There are approximately 90 of these across the U.S., located in states such as Alabama, Arizona, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee, according to Mirror US. Areas like rural Idaho, Maine, Northern California, and Oregon might be safer. The U.S. has strategically placed its nuclear forces in sparsely populated areas to minimize damage in the event of an attack, according to the Irish Star. Intercontinental ballistic missile silos, military bases, and locations where nuclear weapons are stored are dispersed throughout the U.S. Some of the key locations that could be at risk include operational nuclear power stations, with around 90 such facilities scattered across the U.S. in states like Alabama, Arizona, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. Other potential targets might encompass missile silos, military installations, and nuclear weapon storage sites. The map that we're talking about first appeared in a CBS article from 2015, citing sources including FEMA, Medicine and Global Survival, and the National Resources Defense Council for that information. Major cities like New York, Chicago, Houston, LA, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. are often considered prime targets because of their economic significance, dense populations, and concentration of government infrastructure. Other cities that could face risks include Dallas, Fort Worth, Miami, and Philadelphia. So that is what we're talking about here with the map, and I would love to hear from you about what you think of some of these potential targets, but also just in general of what's going on out there. Okay, so we're also going to talk about this, and this is from a USA Today article. It's written by Wesley Clark, a retired U.S. Army general. And he goes on to say that as NATO opens its 75th anniversary summit today, Tuesday, in Washington, D.C., Americans should understand that their friends in Europe are afraid, owing to 2 years into war in Ukraine, more nuclear threats from President Putin, and an emerging alliance of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea targeting an America distracted by a vicious presidential election and bitter partisanship. He goes on to say, our European allies are looking for a sign of strong American leadership, not just rhetoric. The recently passed National Defense Authorization Act from the Senate Armed Services Committee provides just that opportunity, but only if it's reinforced with an even stronger bipartisan appropriation. He says it's no secret to our adversaries or our allies in NATO and East Asia that America's global interests, strategies, and defense capabilities are badly out of balance. They see our brave rhetoric, for example, with China, while our Navy shrinks and ships sail without full crews. They see our shrinking Army forces swinging back to back from Europe to exercises to training with old equipment, struggling to grasp and implement the lessons emerging from Ukraine. They see exhausted soldiers and families. They hear reports of Air Force aircraft older than their crews or retired early because they cannot afford to be maintained. They feel the heat of Russian nuclear modernization without an American answer. Chinese President Xi Jinping put it clearly as he bid farewell to Putin in Moscow last year, saying, changes the likes of which we haven't seen for 100 years, and we are the ones driving these changes. By that, he meant that he could see American weakness, a crumbling American influence, and a new set of institutions capable of smothering the hopes of billions for democracy and freedom, which American leadership has powered. He goes on to say, to these men, democracy is a disease, a virus to be stamped out. And after 2 decades of inconclusive American involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan and a decade of partisan-driven constraints on the U.S. defense budget, they might well believe that the United States is no longer, quote, the arsenal of democracy. And the article goes on from there. I'll go ahead and link it in the description box below. But that is from Wesley Clark, retired U.S. Army general. Okay, now we're going to talk about North Korea, and this comes from RBC Ukraine. North Korea's elite military training delegation travels to Russia. This is according to Reuters. The visit was the first military exchange between the two countries after their leaders signed an agreement on closer military cooperation. The military delegation, which left on Monday, July 8th, is headed by Kim Gum-chol, president of Kim Sung Military University. It did not provide any other details, including the purpose of the visit and the place of stay in Russia. The agency adds that the university, named after the founder of the DPRK, is a training ground for elite military officers, and the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, visited after studying in Switzerland, and he was being trained as the country's 3rd leader. The DPRK supports Russia in its war against Ukraine. Suffice to mention the shipment of more than 1 million artillery shells to Russia from North Korea. In addition, Russia has long been using missiles supplied by the DPRK in its attacks on Ukraine. Russia and the DPRK have also signed an agreement on a comprehensive strategy partnership. It may in particular provide the deployment of North Korean troops to Ukraine, as well as mutual assistance in the event of aggression against one of those countries. So those are just 3 of the topics that I wanted to cover with this first video, and there's going to be many on this channel. And I would also say that for anybody who's watching, if you are current military, former military, if you have any intelligence on the ground at home or abroad that you would like to share that's relevant to what we're talking about, I certainly welcome you to do that. I also welcome you to follow this channel. I've started many YouTube channels over the years. This is the first one where I've wanted to focus on survival. And also just current events that I feel are not being properly covered and actually covered up for whatever reason. I also find it interesting and really devastating that there's no talks of peace, really, and there hasn't been since any of these conflicts have started. There's been some mentions of it, but there hasn't been someone who has genuinely tried to bring together both sides of any of these conflicts. And it just seems like it's a freight train that is just not stopping. And most people just want to live their lives, and they want this kind of stuff to stop. So we're going to see how it goes. We're going to see how it progresses. This is definitely going to be a big week, especially with the NATO 75th anniversary summit. So I'm going to be keeping my eyes on that. And thanks for watching. I'll check in with you guys later. Thanks.